Hello, and welcome to the Grand Cinema Hotel, a podcast hosted by three friends who love cinema. I'm Alvaro, and I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Gus and Nate. Tonight you will be staying in room 118, Raiders of the Lost Ark, the 1981 action-adventure classic directed by Steven Spielberg. So go ahead, get comfortable, and throw on that Do Not Disturb sign as we dig up Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
What's going on, all you archaeologists? Thanks for checking back in the Grand Cinema Hotel. We're staying in the year 1981, and we are handling Raiders of the Lost Ark this week. A personal favorite. This is just one of the all-time greats. Let's hop into it. Gus, how you feel about this movie?
This is a top 10 movie ever made. I absolutely adore this movie with all my
stand
heart.
by this movie.
Yeah, man. These are the kind of movies where, like, this is why I wanted to do the podcast. I don't know if we'll necessarily be adding any insight that no one knows yet, but I just wanted to gush about this movie for an hour or so.
I remember when we started this, when we started the podcast, a few months back, we were talking about, when are we going to do the first Indiana Jones episode?
Yeah, it's been in my idea list of movies since the day, we conceived the podcast. I was like, Indiana Jones, Jaws, there's just certain classics that you have to acknowledge.
I agree.
You just can't. You can't not acknowledge them.
Yeah, exactly.
Ro, how do you feel about Indiana Jones overall?
I've only seen Raiders of the Lost Ark. My first experience with Indiana Jones is the ride in Disneyland as a kid.
Fucking awesome ride.
I think that's actually what made me want to watch the movie, and I don't know. My parents never bought me it, so I saw this movie older. I think it was during high school. It was the first time I seen this movie. I don't think there's many movies that are made like this that are blockbusters in the terms of how it was made and the grandness of it, and even to now, the only one I could really think of that's recently that I was that's comparable is Dune. But even they're so different, and especially filmmaking has evolved so differently with technology that I just think even we were watching some of the behind the scenes right now before, and just how much effort Steven Spielberg put into this blockbuster. I just don't think it gets done even there's very few other times ever where it's comparable.
My comparison to this movie, and I guess it's not recent, it's getting close to being 20 years old already, but would be the first Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
That's where it's this is an action adventure.
It's a grand adventure.
Grand scale. It's an epic movie. The stunts and all of the effects and stuff like that, but a lot of it being practical. Mm-hmm. One is obviously way better than the other one.
Yes.
That being Pirates. No, I'm just kidding.
Wait, hold on.
But
that fool's Mike.
but just that type of movie.
Yeah.
And I think because this movie is so good that why even attempt to try and do this? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I can think of a few examples of movies that are very similar, and that would be, and some of them are video games as well. Mm-hmm. So Lara Croft, the Tomb Raider.
Right.
Now you have Uncharted. There was another one. There's a movie in the 80s with Michael Douglas called Romancing the Stone. Where he's an
I've seen
adventurer.
that. Yeah.
Looking for an idol. Mm. There was one other one that
You could argue the new Jumanji movie, honestly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Even the original Jumanji is very Indiana Jones inspired. Mm-hmm. But it's just, National Treasure. That's what it is. So it's
to the extreme.
Right? That's B movie Indiana.
Yeah.
That's C movie Indiana Jones. Not even B movie.
I think later you guys are going to talk about who almost was Indiana Jones, but if any of those people were Indiana Jones, that's what it'd become National Treasure.
Honestly, maybe.
And it's not directed by Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, this movie, dude, I love this movie. This is one of the first movies I can really remember seeing as a kid. I watched with my dad and my brother, and it just blew me away the whole time. I'm just this movie is incredible. And I just got super into the franchise, and I ended up playing the video game that came out in 2003, The Emperor's
Really?
Tomb. That video game is fucking incredible, I just have to say. Lego Indiana Jones. I don't know, man. I eat this shit up. I love Indiana Jones, so.
I saw this movie probably younger than Ro. I think I saw it in 6th grade or middle school because I have an uncle who had the box set of the original trilogy. So when I would spend the night there, I would just ask him to watch that. And one time I spent the night there for a couple days, and we watched the whole trilogy, and
That's fun.
Yeah, it blew me away.
That's a lot of fun.
My experience is with the ride first, which is like absolutely an amazing
into my
ride.
eyes.
Yeah, like can we hijack this and make this a theme park podcast for a couple seconds? Like that
exactly.
ride is so iconic,
It's
right?
incredible. The breaking bridge, the boulder, the big ass snake.
Were you scared of it the first time you went on it?
I used to not look at anything. I used to hide my head when all the spears would get shot at you and all the bugs on the wall and everything.
Do you remember when they used to have the effect of like the bugs or the rats crawling on your feet? Oh
So
my
much.
god, I hated
So
that. I hated
much.
that. It's still something that bothers me to this day. I don't even think it's in the ride anymore, but that effect, I still lift my feet up. You know what I
Creeps
mean?
me out.
And the giant snake in that ride as well has caused me to have an irrational fear of snakes my entire life.
It gets so close to your face. It gets so close. When I was a kid, I used to always have to be in the driver's seat because I felt like I could get us out.
Okay, I'll drive this the right way.
Exactly.
Right?
I got this, guys. But no, that ride's so much fun.
We can go back to the movie.
Yeah, all right. So what?
I want to talk about how this character was conceived. George Lucas, right around the time that the original Star Wars came out, he started pondering this idea with producer Philip Kaufman. They kind of created the character and like the identity of him. You know what I mean? Originally, he was going to be called Indiana Smith.
Mr. Smith.
It's a no-go. That's a no-go.
That's so bad.
Later on, when Steven Spielberg came on board, he just vetoed that. He's like, we're not doing Indiana
I read
Smith.
that they changed it like first day of production or something.
Yeah,
like,
because
you can't do that.
one of the reasons was because it just sounded tacky, and that there was also another character in movie history called Nevada Smith.
Oh.
So it was much too
Just
similar.
ripping it off.
Oh,
He's
wow.
been there, done that. Yeah. So
Indiana Smith,
Yeah.
Nevada Smith.
and the character was very different than the one we have now. He was like a sleazy gambler and womanizer.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't exactly call it the interpretation we have of him a womanizer, even though there's like a different woman in every film.
Yeah.
Except for the last one, right? I think Crystal Skull is when Marion comes back.
Yeah, she does come back in the Crystal
But the original 3, it's a different lady every time. So he's very James Bond-like, but
is.
I've seen him described hundreds of times as the American James Bond. Steven Spielberg actually wanted to direct a James Bond movie at the time, and
He's made his own.
George Lucas was like, well, I have this idea, and we can kind of do it our way, and it'll be your own version of it. And Steven Spielberg hopped on board. He said he was doing this as a favor to George Lucas, which is like, that's a pretty nice favor. Like, what if I just make one of the best movies of all time? How about that?
I'll help you out, buddy. That's crazy.
Another funny story I had seen about this, and I just think this is one of the most like wholesome things I've ever heard, is that while awaiting the returns of Star Wars, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas were vacationing in Hawaii together because George Lucas was kind of scared of the negative press that he thought Star Wars was going to get, and he thought it was going to be a box office failure, so he just wanted to get away from everything. And while he was on the beach with Steven Spielberg, they were constructing a sandcastle and kind of just, brainstormed the idea, and they were like, yeah, you know what? Yeah, let's do
Like
this.
storyboarded on the sand.
So as they were building a sandcastle, they came up with the idea to do this together.
One of the most impactful movies in American pop culture. All right. That's pretty cool. I've never had a beach moment
Times
like
were
that.
different, right?
Yeah,
I mean, I've
kidding.
known Ro for almost 10 years now, and I've never once built a sandcastle with him, so I'm kind of questioning our friendship
Maybe
at this
that's
point.
what we need to do.
Yeah, I mean, that could be a bonding experience for the 1 year anniversary of the pod,
Take
maybe.
this podcast to the next level.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Okay, so do you want to dive into the story, or do you want to maybe just do like a rough, like favorite parts? Do you want to talk about the production? There's no really need for a scene by scene breakdown.
I really
in
feel
this
like
film.
everybody's probably seen this movie already, and if you haven't, like, there's probably a choice that you've made. You know what I mean?
I mean,
So,
it was widely available on Netflix for many years.
Yeah.
Hulu as well.
you
I
can
think.
rent it for a whole like $2 or $3 now. So, but I do want to talk about the opening scene because I really feel like that establishes just the whole feel for the entire franchise.
That's
Like
that's my favorite part of the whole movie.
it really
the first
sets
5-10 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, I think
Peaked
it's
in the
like-
first 5 minutes.
high school, buddy. But it really just it sets the tone. You know, you're going on these adventures. You're in these foreign places. You're after some kind of artifact, and danger is real, and death is the consequence. And it really just sets the tone for this whole franchise. I just love it. And I think it's just so funny that Alfred Molina is in it too.
He plays Satipo.
Satipo. Adios, Satipo.
Throw me the idol.
Throw me the whip.
I like when he's when the poison dart is in the tree and he grabs it with his finger. He's smelling it. I think he tastes it. He's
does.
like, the poison's still fresh.
Spits it out, yeah.
It's so B-movie vibe, right?
It
and
is.
just like how we did Blowout last week, this is very much an homage to things that were not very good.
Right.
That Steven Spielberg and George Lucas wanted to elevate, and they definitely did.
It really is like it's an elevated, like, fun adventure movie.
You know what I really like about the opening scene is it starts off making Indiana Jones seem like very almost superhero kind of
Like he
it's
comes
like very
out of
ominous.
shadow
Yeah, exactly. And it's a behind shot, and he's wearing this cool ass outfit. And then by the time that he's running towards the plane, you find out this is just a guy. This is just
It's so
and
true.
I think that's why it's probably one of my favorite entries to any character I've ever seen in cinema. Like it really. Because he is really cool, so it really guides you into thinking this is a superhuman, and he does do arguably superhuman stuff throughout the film. But to then like humanize him and characterize him, by then the next scene hits him being a professor. And I think that like connects. Like by the time that he's running from the airplane and we see him in the classroom, we're like, this is just a normal person.
Yeah.
Except like, and you've been saying it before, like once he puts on the hat, he's someone else.
He's a whole another dude
He really
when that
is.
hat goes on.
And I do really think that it's cool because Indiana Jones, like you said, like he is a man. He has his weaknesses, and that's what I think the opening scene does really well. Is it shows you his strengths. Like he's smart. He understands, he understands what he's doing, and he knows what to look for. He's also like his whip skills are fucking awesome. But then you also see his weakness, which is snakes and that kind of thing.
That's what I was gonna say. Is that in between those two scenes, it's like, and he gets on the plane, we see him with the snake, and he's like, we just seen him run away basically from this temple that nobody else has like been alive for, but he's scared of the one snake that's on the plane, and it humanizes him.
It's Reggie. That's my pet snake. and we also get the introduction to Belloc in this scene, which he's a phenomenal villain, honestly.
Yes.
So
Well, I would say he's more of an antagonist than
Yeah,
a villain.
'cause I
right?
mean-
because the Nazis are definitely
Yeah,
the villains.
that's true.
And Belloc is just
he's more exploiting the Nazis for his own personal.
Yes, because I've seen Steven Spielberg describe Indiana Jones as a soldier of fortune, and that's kind of how I see Belloc as well, where it's more of a for hire thing, and like you said, using the Nazis for his own benefit. He's very good at benefiting off the locals or giant groups of people,
Yeah,
right?
he really is.
The Jovitos,
If only you knew how to speak Jovito.
right? He knows how to use the locals against Indy.
He does.
Also, what I wanted to bring up before we get too far ahead and start talking about this opening scene is you just know you're in good hands because it's the Paramount logo, right? And then it dissolves into a mountain that looks just
Exactly
like
like
the
it.
Paramount logo.
You're right.
And it's just
You're
that
so right.
expert little touch, that only someone like Steven Spielberg can do. Just someone who's really a master of their craft. And if you know anything about Steven Spielberg, is that he's very, very hands-on. Very coordinating the whole thing. He said that he sees himself as like having a problem of that because he storyboards and thinks so far ahead that when he's shooting, he's already thinking about the next thing because I've already shot the movie in my head. I just need to get it like executed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You say Hitchcock used to do that too, right? Basically.
Yeah. I mean, Hitchcock is just that guy that so many directors like took little things from. And I mean, no shit. It's
Obviously
all
it
Hitchcock.
works.
Yeah, it really works.
Yeah.
But that opening scene is incredible. And like you guys are talking about with really characterizing him, anytime he does something that like makes him seem above average or like a physical specimen or something like that, it's very quickly undercut
Right.
with danger or some kind of mistake happening.
The whole, it's all like every Indiana Jones movie, almost every scene is like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Or 1 step forward, 2 steps back almost.
Just like Bruce Willis in Die Hard, the first one, where it's yes, he can do these amazing things, but he is just a person. So we are going to see the struggle that he goes through. And if Indiana Jones had any superpower, it would be getting his ass whooped and still getting
coming
up,
back.
right? Yeah, because
Exactly.
he's not really an OP fighter or super strong or anything like that. He he really is just a professor
yeah.
running around in the wild.
Honestly, because
you know
if anything, like you watch those fighting scenes, he would be considered like, air quotes, a dirty fighter. Like he throws sand in people's faces. He sweeps, like you know what I mean? Like he does whatever he has to do. He tries to use his brains to get out of situations. And that's why I think he makes him so fucking appealing.
Dude, that temple scene with Alfred Molina is so good.
Doc Ock, I know, dude.
Right before they walk into the temple, Indy mentions how one of his like rival archaeologists had been here before him, and then you see him when they walk in.
He's already stuck.
And he's already stuck by the booby traps and stuff. But I like how Alfred Molina asks, like, was he good? And then Indiana Jones is like, he was good, very, very good. And it was like, but it just shows you that even these like top tier adventurers, like Indy is one step ahead of even those guys, because we see, like you said, we see that he got smushed by spikes.
Dude, yeah, like for real. I mean, and you can see how like highly regarded his skills are, because he's approached by the fucking U.S. government to go on this adventure and go after this relic. So
when the U.S. Government guys are talking to him in like the hall, like the mess hall or whatever the hell it is, and he was like, how should we say it? You are a obtainer of rare antiquities.
Like, I guess you could say that. I am.
I love that. I just love the first 30. I mean, I love the whole movie beginning to end, but that first 30 minutes is so crucial and so well done. Everything you need to know about Indy is laid out right there, and you really see the duality of him as well. Like when he's at school and he's doing his teaching stuff, it's like a Clark Kent Superman type of thing, you know? He's like, oh, shucks, silly old me. I'm getting flustered by the girl who's flirting with me. Exactly. And when he's at home, he's in a robe and he's drinking champagne. And then to see this like rough and tough guy in this whole other world, it's just like, who is this guy? Really, he's an archaeologist by day, and he's a grave robber by night.
The fool flips the switch, yeah, for real. And I really like the scene where the U.S. government is basically hiring him on to do this expedition, because it's such a good way to give exposition to the audience. Yeah. Rather than just like, just dropping a whole bunch of stuff for no reason. Like he's explaining it to these guys. It's a really good scene, and it just almost gets me so excited every time. Like, here we fucking go.
I think it's so funny that you can tell that the two U.S. government guys are just kind of like, what the fuck are you talking about? Exactly. Because he's talking about how it's like these religious powers and you can talk to God with it. And, they're like, what are these light flashes in the picture? And he's like, the power of God, or lightning or something like that. Yeah, he's like, I don't know. And you get this insight that maybe Indiana Jones doesn't technically believe in any of the stuff that he's going after, because it's all an archaeological on the archaeological side.
Because he even says, he's like talking about God. He says the power of God if you believe in that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And then a few minutes later, when he's celebrating with I believe the character's Marcus.
Dr. Marcus Brody.
Yes. When he's celebrating with him that he just got the funding to go on his mission, he tells Marcus is telling him, like, it's dangerous, and like there's all this, well, other than danger, but like there's the supernatural stuff and all the things you're gonna have to go through. And he's like, what are you, my mother? Are you trying to scare me? I don't believe in that mumbo jumbo. And then a perfect shot of who Indiana Jones is that he grabs his gun and he throws it in his bag, and he's like, you know me, I'm a careful guy. I just think it's so well done. And it is. Harrison Ford is perfect for this role.
Could you imagine if they would have? Because I know we talked about it, but I don't think we said it. Who they were talking about potentially casting as Indiana Jones?
Do you want to go ahead and say it?
I mean, I read that it was potentially Steve Martin, Jack Nicholson, like, I don't even know.
Tom Selleck, Jeff Bridges, like, the dude.
It just doesn't work. Bill Murray. I saw
really.
Yeah. I couldn't see it.
Maybe the movie they had on paper is very different than the one that, like, in tone. You know what I mean? Of what they actually executed.
It could have been maybe a little more comedic, I guess. But I mean, I still find Indiana Jones to be pretty funny sometimes.
It is funny.
So.
I think
there's a lot of stuff in there.
Hijinks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because Steven Spielberg is not good at doing straight out comedy, but he is good at inserting very funny moments into the movie, and there's plenty of them in this one. Like one, and it's very like Three Stooges, or like something you would see in like a Buster Keaton movie or something like that, is when he's on the ship recovering, and the mirror that flips.
Oh yeah.
And Marion hits it and it like smacks him in the chin, and he's like, ow!
Did you say something?
Yeah. Like, it's just those small little moments where it's like Steven Spielberg, when he made 1941, which is the only comedy he made, it wasn't very successful, and I think it's because it was a whole movie of gags and goofs and all that.
That was the one right before Indiana Jones, right?
He was either right before or after. Was it before? Okay, yeah. Gotcha. So he really toned it down, and it's probably a good thing they didn't make this so heavy. Yeah. On the comedy side.
Yeah, I don't think it would have. It wouldn't have been what it is. Like that's what this movie really does. It has everything. It has those little comedic aspects. It has real, fear of death, and it has, romance, and it has action and adventure, and oh my god, it's so good.
Yeah, this is. I mean,
it's
just a goated movie.
The only reason I knew that was because I had listened to the Roger Ebert talk about it, and he talked about how this movie. They're like, oh, I know you guys kind of dismissed Spielberg after the crash of 1941, or that's the only reason I remember it being right before. He's like, but now he's back. He's let you guys know that he's not done yet.
That's so funny to think about in hindsight. He's not done yet. Yeah. Like, well, in 2022, he's still not done yet.
Yeah, he's still not done yet. He hadn't even arguably, he hadn't even done Jurassic Park yet. He hadn't even done E.T. yet. And to think that there was Steven Spielberg's not that good. He hadn't done Schindler's List yet. Yeah. You want to talk about a film, he hadn't done Schindler's List yet.
Just getting off the film for a second and talking about Steven Spielberg in general, I do think that I don't want to say underappreciated. I don't know how to tiptoe this line the right way, but that I feel like he's so good that he's kind of taken for granted for how good he actually is.
That's a good way to put it. Is he just makes these incredible films, and it's almost like every time he puts out a film, that's what people expect, and it's rather of appreciating it. It's just this is what was supposed to happen. I think
he has so many different movies, and I know he started off with the very high spectacle side of movie making with Jaws and E.T. and Close Encounters and Raiders of the Lost Ark and stuff like that, but then his later movies, even stuff like The Color Purple or Munich or Catch Me If You Can, Schindler's List. Yeah, he really did take a leap into being a quote-unquote serious prestige filmmaker. You know what I mean?
Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, Saving Private Ryan. And he's so diverse too.
That's what I was going to say is he really is a master because he can do so many different genres and he kills them.
I mean, we're not saying anything new here. No, it's saying the wheel's a good invention.
Well, exactly, but it's just impressive to me. It's very impressive to me, and I feel like when you talk about him, you have to bring it up. How the fuck do you go from Close Encounters to Indiana Jones to 1941 to E.T. to Jurassic Park? Those are all so different original ideas, and the fact that he's just able to make them all work, it's crazy.
And the technology behind them as well. His movies, just someone like James Cameron or even now Denis Villeneuve, his movies come with new technology that elevates filmmaking for everyone after.
Because I remember you even saying, people were talking about, he's still inventing new shots, new ways to work the camera and stuff. And
he's so meticulous, and he plans out the entire thing, and the production designers made miniatures of everything so that he could straight up plan okay, the car will go this far exactly, and then it will turn, and then here's where it's going to flip over, and he has everything figured out in his head before he's even there, and it's just about him executing it. And I even seen that he's kind of a one-take Jake sometimes, where it's hey man, that was good, and I don't want to risk you doing this again, so we're just going to roll with it because it looks realistic, and that's what I'm going for. One instance is when the truck flips over and we think Marion is dead when it blows up. The stunt coordinator, Glenn Randall, he kind of took it as a point of pride, I'm going to do this stunt. He had been doing stunts for 19 years at that point, and he kind of saw this as one of the bigger ones and was I'm not just going to let one of my guys handle this. I want to do this. I want to perform. So it's taking this big 5-ton truck, and it's going to come around a corner and go up an embankment and flip over, and then it explodes, right? But the way they made it happen was they just took a piece of a telephone pole and they shoved it into the bottom of the truck, so when it hit the embankment, it had no choice but to flip.
Pretty crazy.
And Spielberg sees it happen, and he's all right, cool. He's that's good. Where he's we're not going to do it again. And you can see the disappointment on Glenn Randall's face because he's I was hoping for a bigger spectacle than that. I really wanted it to be spectacular, but hey, it's his movie, and he thinks it's okay, so I guess we're just going to go with it. But in the behind the scenes, I saw multiple instances of Steven Spielberg being we're good. We don't need it again. Let's just move on.
I mean, even what we just watched, when they're in the Well of Souls or whatever it's called, and they did the Anubis shot, they just went for it once, and even though it didn't work out exactly what they wanted, they went with it.
I think it's so funny that Indiana Jones is this guy who cherishes these artifacts and wants to take them to museums, but also has no problem tipping over a 40-foot statue just to get out, right?
Some like mummified remains, and yeah, exactly.
I mean, I understand, like, what was he going to do? Stay there?
Yeah.
But I just think it's so funny that he's just willing to push over this ancient artifact.
That is funny. Man, I was reading. I thought this was pretty crazy that when they were filming in Tunisia, like when they were supposed to be in Cairo, like everybody on the film got sick and got food poisoning.
Yeah,
except for Steven Spielberg, because a fool just brought like a ridiculous amount of SpaghettiOs from America. So the dude ate nothing but SpaghettiOs the whole time that they were filming.
That's where the film of or the scene of him taking out his gun comes from, right?
Oh yeah,
from him being sick.
Harrison Ford had dysentery.
Yeah,
and he was just feeling like shit that day, and he was just like, yeah, what if I just shoot this guy instead of
like,
going
through and fight him? And
at that point, had he even used his gun yet? That's what's funny.
Yes.
Yeah, when they're in the Nepal scene.
Okay.
Oh, Indiana Jones uses that thing. Like, it's not just a prop.
The gun sound effect too. It's so iconic. They even use the same one in the video game. Like, it's so good. It's so good.
Back to the video game.
Yeah, so, anyways.
Indiana Jones uses that thing. He keeps it on him, and that thing is active.
Yeah, no, he packs. But I think it's funny because that little tidbit which you brought up, bro, the fact that instead of doing the whole fight scene, he's like, I'll just shoot the guy. And that's one of the comedic moments in the movie. You know what I mean?
That's the comedic
And the homie picks up the sword from the ground, and they all run away and cheer. Like, it's funny, but... That was one of the first like times that I think it was my dad who had told me that when I watched the first time, and I was just like, oh, like very interesting, and that kind of piqued like a curiosity for like
movies,
what happens behind the scenes type deal, you know what I mean? And it really interested me.
So the way that they the way that they decided to shoot in Tanzania was because they had shot the Tatooine sequences there in Star Wars. So George Lucas is like, okay, I already know where to go to make it look like Egypt. And also that it was like 130 degrees and they shot there for like 1 month. And Steven Spielberg in the behind the scenes was talking about like, we should make a movie about filmmakers in the desert going crazy, like because they were literally going crazy out there, right just melting their brains.
So bad,
and if you look up
130,
yeah, I saw that it would take 5,000 gallons of water a day to keep everybody on set hydrated because in those sequences there's about 600 extras. And to feed and to keep all those people from dying, yeah, they needed like 5,000 gallons of water.
That's
ridiculous.
That's crazy.
Just the water usage on this movie.
And the SpaghettiOs.
Yeah, the SpaghettiO budget.
What's the SpaghettiO budget? 100K?
I need 1 million for SpaghettiOs.
That was more. Man. That would have been more SpaghettiOs than was able to be produced. Probably $1 million worth of SpaghettiO money.
SpaghettiOs on back order.
SpaghettiOs on back order.
This is you know what? I didn't really think about this until right now, but this movie perfectly symbolizes the 80s by its amount of excess. You know what I mean? Like 5,000 gallons of water a day. 600 extras. 600 costumes.
9,000
the SpaghettiO budget, 9,000 snakes.
Yes,
like
that's crazy.
And for 20 mil, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
it's impressive.
This movie was planned for 6 months, shot for 3, filmed on 4 continents. You have interior set design, you have the exteriors on location. This is just movie magic. You know what I mean? There's no better way to describe the first Indiana Jones than just. This is what movie making is, you know?
George Lucas plus Spielberg equals
so iconic, dude. So iconic. The fact that these two dudes are working together.
Like when they were busting out their best shit, too. Like,
not like now.
I want to tell
like they made this now, but like literally them, like you said, coming off of Star Wars
and Jaws,
and be like, and each one of them perspective, and then we've talked about this in last week, but them being part of a generation already, them being really close, specifically them two, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, just that's and their technicality, how meticulous he is. That's why this gets made, and that's what I think it's like incomparable to other things because this is movie making magic. Like this movie is. You get this story in a book. Yes, it's you can only imagine it, but this is it put into screen.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's always something happening. Like this movie never stops.
Yeah, it's 2 hours nonstop,
and it flies by. Like it really does. Like the whole chase sequence throughout Cairo. Like it's just so good, man.
Definitely, dude. we had talked about last week how De Palma was kind of like the underrated one of the bunch.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, this movie came out the same year as Blowout, and it's like, well, this is what Spielberg and Lucas are doing, and Scorsese just came off a Raging Bull, and he's working on King of Comedy.
Not like Blowout's bad, but it is definitely below these.
And Coppola had just done Apocalypse Now. You know what I mean? So that's what's like. I think it's making a little more sense why maybe Brian De Palma's a little underrated compared to these guys.
No,
because
I think that's why we talked about last week. Like he's like the B movie king. You know what I mean? Like, and then you have this, which is just
this is even more of a B movie homage too.
yeah,
you know, like
an homage, sure, but the execution is not.
no,
you know what I mean?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I just can't believe that it still kills me to this day that it's George Lucas and Steven Spielberg. I mean, there's no directors like this today that you could even bring together.
Yeah, like who's gonna collab and do something
Like
crazy
Denis
like this?
Villeneuve and
Nolan,
Christopher
like
Nolan,
Yeah,
or
but they would kill each other.
or
Yeah.
even like if you wanted to be like on that high level but very different, like Denis Villeneuve and like Zack Snyder, like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where like, okay, you handled the technical side and
I'll
I
do the
handled like the
action.
fun, cool
Yeah.
stuff.
I think
you
one
know
of the
what I
other
mean?
things though too is like the fantasy aspects of the ideas that are coming up with aren't like people aren't coming up with those fantasy ideas of like, let's talk about a story about an archaeologist looking for something missing. It's always something
everything
like
is so edgelord.
yeah,
now.
everything is
Yeah.
so grand in space, or it's not a simple premise. And like, if it is a simple premise, it's not a blockbuster movie.
Yes,
That's the
that's
difference.
a good way of putting it.
That's true.
That's a very good way of putting it. Or like if Tarantino and PTA made a movie, I need a shower and I'm probably gonna kill myself. Like,
Like, what is this mess?
So you get
You
you
Wes
get,
Anderson collab with somebody.
yeah,
or like,
exactly.
oh, like let me
Wouldn't
get the
happen.
Ari Aster, Robert Eggers like collab.
Yeah,
I'd be
okay.
like, dude.
Now we're talking.
Okay, I might need that though.
Yeah. Well, when we're producing the new Van Helsing, we'll get them to work together.
Thank you. It finally got dropped. Van Helsing finally made it on the pod.
Exactly.
We'll have Ari Aster write it and Robert
Robert
Eggers
Eggers
direct
direct
it.
Oh
Like,
my
and Hugh
God.
Jackman's coming back as Van Helsing.
Fuck
Yes.
Willem Dafoe is the Wolfman.
But
I
I
can't
think
wait.
back to what we were saying.
But
though,
I
think-
digress.
That's what I think is a big like the story isn't this cringe lord or edge lord type of stuff that you're talking about. It's just a very
It's just fun.
it's just fun, and so is Jaws, and so is E.T., and so Steven Spielberg almost in a good way has like what a kid would make if you gave him a bunch of money.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
He knows how to please a worldwide audience.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And now, like these blockbuster movies that we have, not to shit on Marvel on purpose, but the way the movies are made now with the international box office in mind, you can't really have too many either jokes that only work in like one language, and you have to be very like you have to try to make it as like
You can't
digestible
you
for
can't
everybody.
Pander, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
And back then, like Steven Spielberg isn't doing it with like quippy one-liners and like cheap CGI. He's doing it like he's just making these things that like somehow the whole world is like in agreement that this is fucking
this is
good.
awesome.
You
Yeah,
know what
like,
I
this
mean?
is so much fun.
Whether it be Indiana Jones or Jaws, it just he has a way of making it translate. And I mean I don't even know how to describe it really, but he just has his finger on like the pulse of what an audience wants.
every time I think about it, I just go back to he's a master.
Because the one thing I think even this film gets away with that's weird is like it's PG, but there used to be a lot of blood for it to be PG.
This was before PG
PG-13, right?
like changed.
Yeah.
Because like you can get away with a good amount of stuff in
I
PG.
mean,
It's like the Spikes.
PG-13 movies.
I remember in like Beastmaster, which came out in like the 70s, I think. Like there's tits in that movie, and it's PG.
PG.
Or-
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, Marion shoots a guy in the head.
yeah. The spikes come through that dude's
That's
Yeah,
what I was
like-
or specifically the one that like now looking back at it, it's sure it's a little bit like aged, but like the Nazi's face being burned off.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you see
whenever
that
it
as a kid?
melts.
Yeah, like
That
how
shit
it melts
fucked me
away.
up as a kid. That shit scared the shit out of me.
That's not so.
Belloc's head explodes. Yeah. Tot melts and Belloc
it
explodes.
Yeah, that's true. and so that's what I think.
And
Is
they'll
like,
get their soul sucked. Dude, when I was watching that scene today, of when the arc opens and all of the souls are getting sucked out,
Close
it made
your
me
eyes,
think
Marion.
of it made me think of the new Mortal Kombat where I forget what the character's name is, but he's like, he's about to get his soul sucked.
Jesus Christ.
That scene's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everything about this movie is incredible. I don't even know where to start picking and choosing.
Yeah, I don't know.
But one thing I will say, and it needs to be addressed, we can't go any longer. It's been half an hour and we haven't even acknowledged the great John Williams.
I know.
And his
singing
contribution.
the song.
Yeah, his contribution to Steven Spielberg's work.
Dude,
It
for
can't be
real.
understated.
No, it can't. Like they're simpatico. You know what I mean?
Yeah, oh, Jesus. These guys are truly meant to work together.
Yeah,
you
they
know?
really are.
And what Jurassic Park, E.T., Jaws, this one. It's just some of the greatest music scores ever. And like so iconic. And we have some good ones now, but not like that.
Like, I really feel like if you talk to anybody on the street and you say, give me a famous like movie score, they would probably go with Jaws.
There's two.
Well, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Done.
There's two. There's two. I forgot how to say what they're called, but 2-note, I guess, soundtracks. That's the wrong word, but used in movies that are like equal, and it's Jaws and Psycho. Like those two, dun, dun, like it was just 2 beats. That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
It's just dun, 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 and it's Jaws and Psycho. And I think even when you go to Universal, you still hear both of those.
Yeah. And when
They're
you
like-
go, when you go to Disneyland,
They're bumping
that Indiana Jones music in the ticket line.
Because, like, let's fucking go.
It's hype,
Yeah,
dude.
like,
It's
let's
just
go.
when we go to Universal, like the Harry Potter land, you're hearing the John Williams music there, and just dude, John Williams, has anyone ever carried a movie harder with the soundtrack? I really don't think so.
I don't know.
I mean, yeah, you have your Hans Zimmers, and we have our personal favorites now, like Johnny Greenwood.
yeah.
But dude, come
just
on,
next
like
level
John
shit.
Williams.
Like, that's
You
the
didn't
shit
bring
that I
up
hum in
Star
my
Wars?
head.
Yeah, oh, Star Wars. Yeah, there you go.
We're talking about Spielberg
I'm turning off, I'm
collaborations.
retired.
We're talking about Spielberg collaborations, but like just going back to George Lucas, yeah, like he did Star Wars. And I mean, come on, Star Wars. Equally, just like what Gus is talking about, they get carried so much through their soundtrack, like making moments that are already special even more special, or they stand out even more because just like the music starts to like tie into your emotions as you're watching it, and as it starts to drop, like you're anticipating or you're getting scared with the character or whatever the emotion may be. But in any of the movies, and John Williams just makes the adventure much more. It feels like an adventure, you know.
Does. It really works perfectly.
Even the way he uses the music in like subtle moments, like when we see the outside of Indiana Jones's house, and you just hear the theme very light, and like you if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it. But it just carries the whole movie, and I don't even know what to say. But I just thank you, John Williams. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to talk about the like the end scene in regards to the score. Like at first, there's almost no music, and when they open up the ark. And then all the stuff starts coming out, and you're kind of like, well, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? And it's like this eerie music, and then all of a sudden it switches. It's like dun dun dun, like oh my
yeah.
god! And you know, like nope, they're fucked. They're totally fucked. They should not have done this, but that's just so good. It works so well.
This movie's so fucking
Absolutely gushing.
good. Yeah, like this may be the happiest I've been watching any of the movies that we did for the pod.
Oh, I had a smile on my face the whole time.
Yeah, like even, I loved Licorice Pizza. I loved when we did the Ran episode, but this just hits on an entirely different level for me. And I think it's because there's the ride. There's the overall references and homages to Indiana Jones and pop culture. Like he's so ridiculously popular. Maybe less now,
Maybe.
but
I remember when we were
I
growing
don't-
up, like Indiana Jones was like a cool thing that everybody wanted. They used
Yeah.
to sell the whips at Target and all that stuff. Like,
Jesus.
I'm serious.
yeah,
I
bro.
was gonna say one of the reasons why I've been meaning to bring this up, didn't know when to bring it up, but the fact that it's like not as popular anymore now. And I was gonna say, it always reminds me of the South Park bit where this is George Lucas and
Steven
Spielberg, and they just like it's pretty like only South Park can get away with it, but they're just talking about how they've really like fucked Indiana Jones, and it's like every time like talking about that just kind of reminds me of like that's kind of like what happened after there, because right now we're talking about Raiders of the Ark, but to talk about this and not talk about how this ends up becoming 4 movies, and people think the second one sucks, and I didn't even know that the second one, like you guys were kind of talking about it, that like he didn't even want to make the second one, but then he came back and like, let me fix this with the third one. Like I didn't know there was that much to it.
Yeah.
you know,
It's just like
And then
with the
fourth
second
one-
Jurassic Park, he did not
Yeah.
want to do that one either.
You can tell. Like I do like the second one. It definitely feels like a mini adventure compared to this and the third. And the third, like you could argue with me that it might be better than the first, but
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that the character development and the backstory you get and just the lore of the story, it really comes together in that third one. And that send-off is chef's keys.
It's so good.
But the fourth one...
Yeah, we don't talk about that one. I'm Mutt Williams. Oh, my God.
I mean, maybe because we're not part of that generation, I don't feel so attacked by George Lucas. I've always thought George Lucas was kind of... For someone who's created so many iconic things, you would think he'd get some kind of break, right?
Yeah.
But the prequels and the fourth Indiana Jones, it's kind of a death knell for him,
Yeah.
you know? Where I think it really just kind of was like, you know what, fuck you guys, I'm done with this bullshit. Like, you guys are ungrateful bastards
he's
for
gonna
what
shit
I've
on me,
created.
I'm not going to make anything. Yeah. Kind of a shame, but...
I mean, Steven Spielberg did not get as attacked, I would say, for the fourth one as like George Lucas does
For the idea.
for just his overall
Yeah.
involvement
No,
in
it's
the
true.
story. And it's really unfair, honestly, because
is.
the more time passes, the more revisionist everyone grows about everything, right? And the prequels sucked. And now, oh wait, the new sequels, they'll suck even worse.
Maybe the prequels weren't so bad.
Maybe they should let George Lucas direct some stuff again. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just like, you didn't have to go this hard on George Lucas just because you didn't like the fourth Indiana Jones
exactly.
movie. Because
You crushed him.
I hate to do this, but this is a fucking kid's movie. You know what I mean? So this idea of like your childhood being ruined, like let me tell you, I was a child when I saw the prequels and the fourth Indiana Jones movie, and I was not this butthurt when they came out.
No.
I was just like, it was cool, I guess.
And I honestly don't even feel that. I mean, like, I don't really enjoy the fourth Indiana Jones all that much, but I mean, it's definitely not the worst movie I've ever fucking seen. Like, it just doesn't hold up to the first three. Like, it's just different.
There's a
than the
reason
other
Shia LaBeouf when he streamed all of his movies back to back to back to back. He played that one. No, he played that one. He
How are
didn't
you
play,
not, dude?
Yeah, like, 'cause
You
he
have
didn't play
to at least acknowledge
he played
it.
some of the other ones, but he played that one.
It's tight. Like,
I mean-
Mutt Williams.
Shut the fuck up.
Oh my god.
I mean, like, I'll give it. There are some cool parts, and honestly, like, I feel like a lot of people shit on the aliens in that movie, which the aliens aren't really my problem with that movie, because everything at the end of Indiana Jones always becomes like way bigger than you thought it
Supernatural.
was. Like, it's all like it's a Lost Ark. It's a dude that can fucking rip your heart out. It's the Holy Grail. It's aliens. Like,
Kalima.
yeah, exactly. Like,
I guess with the fourth one, he chose wrongly or whatever. I butchered it, but you know what I'm talking about.
the Holy Grail.
Yeah, the Holy Grail scene.
It's interesting about this. They had a mutual friend of ours talk about like I brought up that we were going to talk about Raiders of the Lost Ark. He's like, maybe you should watch the third one too to like conclude how you feel about. I was like, but we're not talking about the series. I was like, because I'm pretty sure later we'll probably end up going at least into the third one and talking about it as a whole.
Yeah.
So then that's how I was like, I don't really like see. I don't feel like I should see the third one to be like, oh, this holds more weight now or less weight. Be like, I'm just doing Raiders of the Lost Ark like the person who saw it for the first time. Like there is nothing yet out. That's how we had to act when we're doing the podcast. Like, so I brought up that it's like a series, but that's because we're looking at it like revisionist wise, but as like we're just judging it as one. And so it's interesting to me, having not seen the other ones, that you guys that the third one is that good or seen that by some.
I do think that they're like both 5-star movies, the
Yeah.
first and the third one. I think the second one is like a 3-star movie or 2.5.
I would give it. I give it like a 3 probably.
That's how much it falls off.
I would even give it maybe 3.5.
I don't want to say that it's like a bad, horrible movie because it's not. It's just it feels like the second. Okay, the second one feels like what you would think the first one is if it was bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's a problem. The problem with the second one is the first one already existed.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
Yes.
Like, because if the second one would have came out alone, it'd probably be pretty dope. But when you're comparing it to a fucking classic masterpiece,
you
it's
mean.
hard.
The second one is more comparable to like the Brendan Fraser Mummy than it is like
That's a good point.
an
That's a good
epic.
That's perfect.
I mean,
yes.
honestly, the first one is the first Indiana Jones is heavily inspired by stuff like Lawrence of Arabia,
Right,
right?
yeah.
So in my eyes, I see Indiana Jones and Lawrence of Arabia as like these are equal scales of like masterpiece movies, right? One is very dramatic and serious, prestige, and this one's a blockbuster, right? But the second one, I would say it's more
Mummy.
like like The Mummy, you know,
yeah.
which is like
Or
a lot
Scorpion
of
King?
fun. No, don't do that. Don't do that.
No, the Scorpion King's the fourth Indiana
Oh,
Jones.
sure, whatever. Yeah.
I'll give you that.
I almost kicked you out of the house.
But like if you haven't seen the second one though, I still think it's worth the watch. Like I really do think it's enjoyable.
You know, I'm contemplating buying the box set because I'm like, well, I don't want two of them. It's like, but I do want the other two. So is this worth $70? Like,
give me the two you don't want. I don't care.
We alternate.
My brother
them.
thinks the second one's the best.
We alternate them like a divorced couple. Okay, you can have 2 and 4, and I'll have 1 and 3, and I guess we'll switch them for Christmas.
Why do I get the old couch?
You know, 3 is my favorite. Well,
Tough shit.
Oh man, I do want to talk about the stunts in this film. There's a million of them.
That's what takes it over the edge. Like that's what this movie never stops with. Is there's always stunts going on.
Dude, the last hour of this movie is so balls to the walls. There's planes, cars, trucks, horses, boats, submarines.
RPG.
Yeah, RPGs.
Oh, yeah.
A supernatural experience that melts people's faces and blows their heads up. Fire shoots into the sky.
That's awesome, dude.
There's just so much going on, dude. Like the second half
And
alone.
you get some romance in there too. Like,
Yeah,
come
you
on.
do. Where does it hurt? Here.
I love that scene's so good.
It really humanizes him,
does.
right? That he's kind of a softie.
Because that's when you get that, like, he's broken down, he's got his ass kicked, and then, he opens up, he becomes a little vulnerable, so.
Yeah. I mean, I do want to talk about the stunts, but since we brought that part up, I do want to talk about Marion as well, because she's a vital character to the entire arc of Indiana Jones. Ro, I know you said that you didn't really think that she was, like, the strongest character, or you had heard that there was like a bad female character in the Indiana Jones movies, but it's the second one.
Yeah, I thought it was
But you
her.
thought it was Marion, right? Do you want to kind of
I guess
explain yourself?
Yeah, she gets introduced as being somebody who doesn't like Indy at all. For what seems like he hooked up with her when she was like 13. So granted, I don't know there's no exact age, but with that would make sense why she doesn't like him.
Is this Licorice Pizza or Indiana Jones? Here we go with the age discourse.
So then he comes back because he needs help, and she's adamant to help him. And then we get a lot of her opening scene where she's drinking a lot of this alcohol, and she's a tough person.
He's a tank.
But then just to quickly, I guess, get to my point is that then you get a scene where she's wearing a dress in the snake pit, and she's screaming for Indy to help her. And it's kind of like, well, this is not the same character that gets developed in the beginning. You're showing me symptoms of a character that's really strong, but towards the end, be like, yes, she shoots like the barrels to like save him, but then she can't get out. It makes it seem like, I need your help, Indy, to get me out. And I feel like there's no, it doesn't make sense to me why you build such a strong character who just seems to, and then just the whole dynamic of you don't like him and all of a sudden you do like him because he's older now. That just does not make sense to me whatsoever.
I think honestly, I get the whole. I don't want to dive into the whole age thing honestly because I really don't know. But it's like when you see in it, like you have an ex or something and you hate them, but then do you really hate them? You know what I mean? Like I think it's kind of more like that. And then for the whole character thing, like I do see where you're coming from. Like she does have instances where she needs to be saved almost, but it's like she didn't put herself in that dress. Like she was forced by Belloc to be in that dress.
There's multiple white dresses in this movie. It's almost like a symbolizing like virginal, maybe, like, you know what I mean? Like the whole white dress thing. Like she wears 3 different white dresses in this movie.
I do think that she is stronger than some of the other female characters that I've seen in action adventure movies like this, but I mean, maybe that she could have been a little bit stronger too.
I just think
I do think it's because she's not the main character though.
Yeah.
And she is a side character, but it's not like she's the co-star, I would say. Like this is the Indiana Jones show. Yeah. Because we also have like Sala, and Sala is kind of a coward. You know what I mean? He does. You go in first to the snake
really
pit.
like him.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
he's a good
Indiana
character.
Jones is a
He's a good
one-man
character.
show, and having Marion even there is already hurting him because he has to worry about somebody when he's not used to worrying about anybody while he's on these missions. Mm-hmm. And to your point of like her joining the mission, if the bar wouldn't have burned down, she would not have went on the mission.
Right.
The only reason she's there is because the $5,000 burned. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And she tells him like, "I'm with you until you pay me back, and I'm your goddamn partner." Like it's such a good line reading, dude.
Yeah.
But see, I think that's kind of like what I'm going at against. Like we're partners, right? But then
Yeah, but is she really? No, she's not.
But it's not. But then it comes from like, well, what that you were mad at for years and never wanted to talk to him got solved in this adventure.
Well,
all of a sudden. Now it's okay to be with him because she even says, "You're not the same man that you were." I think she says 10 years ago, or that you were before. Yeah, I think is what she says. But it's like I just don't understand the dynamic there of what improves for her to all of a sudden like Indy anymore. Like did she get saved? Sure,
movie tropes.
Yeah.
But
I mean, it's as simple as that, really.
because we talked about like last week in Blowout, like that the female character in there deters from the movie completely because it's the 80s and be like, why is this such a weak character? This is a movie that was made the same year and the woman character almost exactly just even it is better though for sure because she does have,
But I think it's like exponentially better. Like,
because
I don't
she
even
ha-
think it's close.
because she does have like her own redeeming qualities of like she's strong on her own, and in Blowout it really is just tagging along. But I just think like it is his show, and it just seems like, well, what was the point of even putting her in the story?
I
To
mean,
humanize him? Be like, but
I don't know.
I don't know. I mean,
I see
I
where you're
don't
coming
know.
from, but I also disagree.
because
Yeah.
I can't seem to find the answer for it, and which is why I go like, so what was the point of putting her?
I
in
mean,
the
I
movie?
think it is to humanize him. I mean, and I don't think that's a bad thing.
I mean, Indiana Jones is not exactly someone we should be rooting for,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
that's a
he's
huge.
kind of a dick.
that's where like because that's the thing is like if you're fine with settling with like, okay, yeah, add groomer to what's wrong with him and I still root for him, like, okay, that's fine, that makes sense. But to me it just kind of deters, like that's like probably the worst thing out of him, out of anything that I think that he had, like that in the first one at least they talk about, that I was like just kind of like, okay, be like, I understand it's a different time, but this seems kind of weird to talk about in the 80s, to talk about a character that's doing that.
Yeah, I just really like. I mean, I don't know. I mean, is it ever explicitly said like how old she is in the movie?
No, that's why I said
The
I
thing
only
is
know
that
from
she's like supposed to be 25 at the start or in the current period of the movie, which is 1936.
Yeah.
And it was 10 years ago
Right.
when I've seen, so she's supposed to be like 15 years old and he would have been probably
our age.
20s.
His 20s,
Yeah,
yeah.
in his 20s because he was in college studying under her father. I do think she's there to humanize him, but not in a good way.
Right.
I think it's to help further the idea that you're rooting for someone who you wouldn't normally be rooting for because this guy steals from the indigenous people. He puts it into museums. He's
Yeah.
getting paid for the shit.
He kills all kinds of
He
people.
kills people left and right. He's fucking her. Been in, like, I guess you could say, an abusive relationship with an underage girl.
Yeah.
Granted, it's the 30s, and I think the fact that it's a movie in the 80s talking about the 1930s is why it's kind of something that's so brushed over.
Because that's what I was gonna say, is it really is just totally brushed over. So I guess that, like, I've honestly never even thought about that really until you brought it
Yeah.
up. Like, it never, like, obviously I just was like, okay, yeah, they had a thing when she was younger, like, whatever. It never popped it, like, that's never come up for me, I guess. But
Yeah.
honestly, but
I mean, I don't know. I think she's a good character.
I like her.
especially when with the other female characters that come later on in these Indiana Jones
part of it also
movies.
might be a little biased because I was young when I saw it and I fell in love with her.
I mean, she's hot. Don't get me wrong.
like-
That's probably the main issue that I'm having. Like, so she's just hot.
But she's
See,
not.
but I don't feel that way
She
at
beats
all.
people up.
She
She kills
helped-
people. She pulls a knife on Belloc. Like,
Indiana
I
Jones
don't
would have
know.
died in that bar in Nepal if she hadn't shot the guy in the head.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm talking about. It starts like that, but then towards the end, what is like?
So would you
what
have
is it-
liked her to save him at the end of the movie? You know what I mean? Like, would you have liked to become the Marion Ravenwood in the Raiders of the Lost
No,
Ark?
I just don't understand where the like.
She's his partner, but she is not on equal footing with him, and I don't think that's how we're supposed to take it either. I mean, I don't feel that way.
I don't know. I don't know why not. That's my point though too, because it's like they're both normal people. I don't really understand.
She's also
why they're
not well
equal.
equipped to even be in this
he's
world.
the guy that goes on adventures all the time. Like, she works a bar.
But she's the daughter of the guy he studied for.
Yeah, but
That's
that
my
doesn't mean
point.
that she goes and does stuff.
She might be on the trip, but that doesn't mean that she's like, yo, let's go in this cave and
Yeah, like
dive and
she's
rob.
not the one that's like exploring how to do this. Like, she doesn't even know what that fucking thing is around her neck.
She also hates her father too,
Yeah, she hates
because
him.
she tells Indy like, well, dealing with you, and also that I've been drug all over the world looking for these rinky-dink artifacts that don't matter, and my father cared more about that than he did being with me. So this is funny. Like, this type of guy is obviously not someone she really cares for, but it is the world that she's in. You know what I mean? I don't really know if I'm saying
mean,
it the right way.
Like, she has daddy issues and she fell for a dude that's just like her dad.
Yeah, I guess that is a good way of putting it.
And honestly, like, the fourth one, I think the fourth one expands a little bit more on her character too, but I really can't remember.
They get married at the end, dude.
Do they really?
Yeah, they get married at the end. She's Mutt's mom. Like,
That's right. Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. That fourth one, you get fucked, dude.
Dude, she's Indy's true love. Like,
That's so funny. What's gonna happen in the fifth one? I also think it's funny that this fool gets hurt every fucking Indiana Jones movie that he does.
oh, like in real life.
Yeah,
right?
like in real life, like in this one, like when they had that whole moving plane, like the plane was out of control scene when the dude gets splattered by the propellers. The plane ran over his leg and he tore a bunch of ligaments in his leg. And then I know in like something happened in Temple of Doom, and I think something happened in the third one, but I know he snapped his leg in the fourth one. I think he did it on Star Wars too. Like,
Jesus,
he's a mess.
On the Force Awakens, he fell inside of the model of the Millennium Falcon and like cut his head open because he
Yeah.
fell into one of the doors that was going up and down. And it's like, dude.
This is off balance, dude. Like,
Before we move off of Marion, I did want to say that I think one of the reasons too, where she kind of like, I don't want to say gets worse, but is less helpful, is because, and we saw this in the behind the scenes right now that we were watching, is that the actor Karen Allen, she mentions like, oh, well, Indiana Jones is wearing this leather jacket and boots and all this protective gear, and he's got a whip and he's got a gun, right? He has all this stuff. I'm wearing a dress and I'm barefoot. Like, how is that really a fair thing for my character to go through? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I think that is like an explicit way of showing that like back then they were not trying to even use these female characters in that way, and that she's a stronger character. Even she's strong in spite of the fact that she's not like represented that way, if that makes sense.
I can see that. Yeah,
Like she's kind of punching above her weight, if is like I guess a way of putting
that
it.
makes sense. I mean, yeah, I don't know.
What's she gonna do barefoot and wearing a dress in the desert? You know, like maybe she had a gun or a whip or a knife,
that's what,
because
like, I mean-
she handles when she has a gun.
I mean, even Salah does less than she does. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, he's not even gonna go in the snake pit.
dude, yeah, you go down first. Yeah,
Which I do think it's hilarious that it's just some British dude.
Yeah, it's Gimli. It's Gimli.
I mean, I'm kind of good on talking about the story overall. I feel like if you are aware of Indiana Jones, you don't need me to give you a scene by scene breakdown.
Yeah.
I'm more interested in talking about like the behind the scenes and just certain moments. And one that really sticks out to me is maybe the funniest thing I've ever seen in a movie is what, you know, the guy with the eye patch and the monkey.
Dude, I think that guy's so funny. Yeah.
Okay, when
Yeah.
they're going to see the Nazis and he does the Sieg Heil, and
the
then the
monkey
monkey does it too.
Nazi monkey.
Low key, that's maybe the funniest thing I've ever
so-
seen in a
it is
movie, dude.
super
They
funny.
trained a monkey to do the same.
Because I legit, when I watched it, because I watched it the other day, I watched it this morning, but when I was watching it the other day, I was like, what if the monkey's just walking around doing Sieg Heils after this? Like, you can't take the trick away from him.
Yeah, exactly.
The fuck's with this monkey, dude?
God,
He just
what
wants
the
more
hell?
of the treat, so he just keeps doing it. Like, give me the treat.
No more dates, bro. No more dates. They're bad dates.
They're bad dates.
Yeah, bad dates. Yeah, monkey's all rigor mortis on the table.
Yeah.
I just like that eye patch guy to me is such a testament to like the Indiana Jones movies, because it's just like there's just some dude with an eye patch with a monkey, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just so much fun.
You know,
like,
in the very opening scene, the guy who tries to betray Indiana Jones and he uses the bullwhip to get rid of the gun. That's the same guy. They used him just again.
is it? That's pretty cool.
Yeah, because I
know
was looking at the IMDb.
He died 3 times.
They
I guess so.
That's
yeah.
good. I was reading somebody was breaking it down. They said a character dies 3 times because he plays
3 different characters.
and then one of them was, I think it was him, because then he does an extra.
There's another guy that gets killed multiple times too. It's the dude the big guy that got killed by the plane. He's somebody else that gets killed as an extra in it too.
That's interesting.
So, yeah, I died 3 times.
I mean,
in
I don't
this
blame him.
movie.
You talk about 600 extra for I'm going to reuse too, but
Dude, 600 extras means 600 costumes as well that they had to get made for
Yeah,
this.
that's crazy.
Oh, man.
The whole
dude.
digging, like the dig site, the dig scene and setting and everything is crazy, dude.
Dude. So good.
Yeah,
Right?
Incredible.
I know I said I wanted to talk about stunts, but this just made me think that we have to talk about Belloc.
Belloc. I like one of the best, like you said, antagonists of all time.
Yeah, because
antagonist is a good
he's
word for it.
you could make the movie from his point of view.
You
It
could.
wouldn't be as nice.
it would be a pretty interesting movie though.
But he is Indiana Jones, and I think he shows you even more the idea of that these are bad guys, quote unquote, or lesser evils, right? Obviously compared to the Nazis, they're a lesser evil.
Yeah.
But
you would hope.
yeah, stealing from the indigenous tribes and putting your stuff in European museums is like in 2022 eyes. It's
Very
like,
imperial of you.
this deserves to be in a museum. Like, does it though?
Yeah,
They
okay.
can't keep their thing.
But
like,
they pay handsomely.
and they're doing it for money. Like, oh my god. But Belloc is incredible. And just the way, like, he shows these certain emotions throughout the movie that kind of shows you that he's not exactly as bad as this just feels so funny to say. He's not as bad as the Nazis, right? Because he kind of falls in love with Marion too.
Yeah, he does. I mean, he's almost doing what he's doing. Like, he's doing what he's doing out of curiosity, out of, like, he says, like, their religion is archaeology, him and Indiana Jones.
Yes.
And he partners with the Nazis, obviously, because they probably have the biggest wallets, and they're going to fund him and give him the ability to do what he needs to do. And that's when him and Indiana Jones differs. Indiana Jones, in his head, he's doing it right for the museum, and, so... But I think one of my favorite scene with Belloc is, I mean, the opening scene's great too, but the scene where they're in the bar after he thinks that Marion died, and he's just kind of tells him, and he's breaking him down like, we're not so different from each other, and I'm basically just like a shadowy figure of you, and you're like one push away from becoming me. And it's just so fucking good. And Indiana Jones is like, I don't know. He said something about, I'm going to take you to hell too, or we can both go, or something like.
It's a Batman Joker moment, right?
Exactly.
Like, we're not so different, you and I.
Exactly. But it just works so well, and he's right. I mean, he is right. They really aren't different.
I love when Belloc has Marion in the, he has her held captive, right? And he's drinking with her, and, like, Marion can drink anybody under the table, right? Except for Belloc. Like, Belloc holds his own in that scene, and we also see that he kind of doesn't respect the Nazis either. You know what I mean? Like, he does treat them like, you're working for me, and it's about getting the Ark. And he brings it up a lot. Like, what about your Führer? Like, what does your Führer want? Because the emotions run high when you're in these kinds of situations, and like Todt and Dietrich and the other Nazis, they kind of want to I wouldn't say forget the motive, but they do get caught up in their hate for Indiana Jones. Oh, for sure.
Well, I mean, because you even have the scene where, like, what you're talking about, when he has her captive and they're having the drinking scene, and he's like, the Nazis are going to be here soon, and they're not going to be very nice to you, kind of thing.
Yeah, he's like, you're going to have to give me some kind of information that can help me.
And that just further establishes the difference between him and them. Like, they are separate entities. So,
yeah. Oh, also, when Marion gets thrown into the Well of Souls where they find Indy. Which, bro, it's hilarious to me that Indy was able to dig from sunset to sunup the next morning.
Nobody saw.
15 feet away from the other dig site. And when Belloc wakes up in the morning, he's like, what the hell?
As soon as they get the Ark up, he's like, I'll take that.
But Marion gets pushed into the well.
They're to kill her.
And Belloc is very upset because he's like, I was told the girl would be mine. And when they close the stone over the entrance or whatever, he kind of closes his eyes and like gasps, like lets like a sigh out, you know what I mean? Like, he's very upset that Marion is getting caught up in this anyways, because he kind of wants her for himself. Yeah. And I just think it's that him being like the shadow Indy, right? He's like, I want your girl too. Yeah, exactly.
It's so bad.
I wanted to bring this up because we saw this in the behind the scenes, and I just think it's so funny that Harrison Ford is kind of this nonchalant actor, right? Like, he's been in two of the most iconic roles of all time, Han Solo and Indiana Jones, and he kind of sees it like it's just whatever, another day at the job, right? And it's Spielberg, and he's going through the shot list for the day with Harrison, and it's the Well of Souls.
Well of Souls.
Yeah, and they're going through it, and Spielberg's just going a mile a minute, and Harrison Ford is like holding a hot dog or a sandwich or something, and he's like, I'll be right back, I need to put some mustard on this. And Steven Spielberg's like, oh, is the suspense killing you? I'm kind of telling you the best part of the scene, and he just walks away.
I need some mustard. I'll figure it out.
I thought another hilarious moment with the behind the scenes was Harrison Ford talking about being dragged by the truck, right? Mm-hmm. And they ask him if he'd ever done something like this before, and he just gives this smart ass answer of like, no, I haven't. And he just called it another useless experience, which is like, this is one of the most iconic stunts in movie history. It's been recreated so many times, and it's a useless experience.
It was
it was okay.
I wish, dude, I don't know. How did you not fangirl so hard?
What do you think of Harrison Ford as as a stunt actor? Because I saw him say something very interesting on the topic.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, for what I know that he does, I honestly don't know exactly like which stunts he did and which stunts he did not do.
So he does do quite a few of them, but he kind of sees it as a disservice to stuntmen to say that what he's doing is the same thing as what the stuntmen do. He said it was more physical acting, right? And the stuntman, Glenn Randall, kind of agreed with him. He's like, because a stuntman can get thrown off a building, or insert here, whatever situation, and they can cuss and scream and do whatever they have to do to make themselves, like if something goes wrong, right? But Harrison Ford would have to stay in character as Indiana Jones, even if something is going wrong, on the off chance that they're still going to use that in the movie. True. So that it's just a whole different mindset that you're in as a stuntman. You're not thinking about the character. You're thinking about surviving this stunt.
I'm trying not to die right now. Dude, that's crazy.
And I thought that was really cool because stuntmen get no love in the industry.
Cliff Booth needs love.
Right? Like, how is this not an award? Or how is there no recognition for stuntmen?
I have read a lot of people say that. Like, why the fuck don't stuntmen get recognized like that?
They do the most dangerous things in the movies.
They put their body
Some of them have lost
line.
their lives before.
I mean, dude, I feel like how many people die every James Bond movie that gets made nowadays?
Honestly, I don't know.
Like, it seems like at least 1 or 2 people die every James Bond movie that gets filmed. I'm not even
Christ.
kidding. Yeah, it's crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah, it is bad. And that's like nowadays in the 2010s, 2020s. Like, dude, come on.
For me to be like, I don't want to watch it.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I know. Like, 2 people died for this. Why?
Tom Holland broke both his ankles in Uncharted. Looks like trash.
It does.
CGI's garbage.
Oh man. Do you guys want to discuss like maybe your favorite scene overall in the movie?
I mean, I have a few of them, honestly. Like I said, I really love the opening scene. I think that I really like the set of the bar in Nepal. I just think it's really cool. But I love the fucking ending. I love the ending. Like when all the Nazis are getting wrecked and the Ark's lid blows up to the heavens and then just comes down and closes on it's so good.
It's just movie making magic,
It's
right?
so good. Yeah, dude.
I have to agree with you. It's a pretty fire scene. But that's like the dumbest way of putting it. If I had to pick one, it might be that like 30-minute action sequence of recovering the Ark once it's been stolen from them. Like when they get out of the Well of Souls, and then you have like when
he's on the horse. And
you have the horse, the plane, the truck.
Planes, trains, and automobiles.
That scene is just all gas, dude. Like, he gets onto the truck. He gets inside the truck. He gets shot in the arm. He kicks 2 dudes off the cliff. And what I love are these small little character moments of like Harrison Ford like kicking a guy out of the truck, looking in the rearview window that he's spilling out, and he just like gives a little smile. Like you could just tell that he really enjoys like what he's doing, And you don't really have this charisma nowadays with some of these action guys. Like,
it's almost like,
do you really consider Marvel action? I wouldn't say that I do.
I don't know. I mean, I guess you could. I mean, they are, I guess, but I also kind of feel like you just put them in their own category.
It's like sci-fi.
It's
like science fiction action.
It's superhero action.
It's fantasy.
Yeah, like.
But superhero stuff is so different that it feels weird to put it all in one box, right?
True.
But yeah, I mean, even like John Wick, right? Like that's a pure action movie, and you don't really get those like character moments during John Wick. No. It's like before the action starts or after, but like. During a fight scene, you don't see John Wick smile and laugh and feel a sense of relief when he accomplishes something just to turn around and have another bad thing happen to him, I
feel like it's weird because almost nowadays I feel like a lot of the action, it's like they have to be stone cold action guys. Like, you know what I mean? Like Fast and the Furious, like all that kind of shit. Like these big action movies, it's just like, I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
and Harrison Ford has so many character moments. Yeah, so much personality through the fighting. You know what I mean? Like when he's fighting that giant guy. And he's like, come here. And he's like
exhausted, yeah.
Okay. And then he gets off the plane and he puts him up like a 1930s boxer and he gets punched in the face and his knees weaken and he falls. There's just so much going on. And especially with the physical acting, I just feel like it's not something you really see as much. It's more, it is that stone cold killer thing that you're talking about. But I want to say that's my favorite scene in the movie because it's so long.
It's a great one.
It's just all action. It's it's like what you would expect at a Fury Road. You know what I mean?
For real. Just dudes all over the truck.
Just dudes flying left and right.
I forgot that he got shot until I rewatched it too. When the blood splatters all over the show, I was like, damn, okay.
Ooh, before we move on from my favorite scene, I do have to talk about the stuntman. Let me get his name. I think it's Terry Leonard. He was the guy who went under the truck. When he's sliding under the truck. He had attempted this stunt 4 months earlier on a movie called The Lone Ranger, which I'm sure if you know Indiana Jones, you probably know
Johnny
that.
Depp?
No, but kind of like that movie.
Hey, it's fun.
he did the same stunt with Stagecoach and Six Horses, and both of his legs were run over by the Stagecoach. It tore up all kinds of tendons in his leg. He honestly thought it was going to be the end of his career because he wasn't going to recover in time to ever get work again. But luckily, somehow, he didn't break any bones, and he was able to just heal up and then start shooting this movie.
I'll do it again.
Yeah, and I seen another like a behind the scenes shot of him when he's crawling from the hood to hold on to the grill, where he just falls off the truck and starts rolling, and they're like, "Whoa, stop!"
Jesus.
Yeah,
This is
this dude's just putting his life on the line for these
That's
stunts.
crazy shit, man.
It can't be understated how much it adds to the movie.
I think it does. It really does. Like, you can tell, like, there's no CGI. Like, the fact that it's all practical and these are all stunts it's impressive. What you have a favorite scene, Ro?
Yeah, I think we've obviously talked about it a lot, and I kind of mentioned it before, but it's the opening.
Yeah.
But I think if to break it down to more like a scene, it would be from the moment he takes the article and then starts
The
running
artifact?
out. Yeah, the
idol?
artifact. The second that he takes it, from then on, like him trying to get out of the room and then getting like, Alfred Molina's character doing him dirty. And then by the time that he pops out through the spider webs, and then just for someone to be like, give me that.
Yeah.
And I think, because I just think that obviously foreshadows what's going to happen, and it always happens with their relationship. It shows you the two characters that matters a lot. And it just, within just starting this movie, you already have like so much action. You know, and I think that's my favorite one. I like the snake sequence too, when he gets out, and yeah, obviously the what you just talked about, Gus, like them getting the like that car chase. Specifically, what I like is how it ends is that he just goes into the garage and the vendors just close it up.
And they all celebrate.
And then the Nazis, and this kind of like the comedy stuff, like the Nazis come through and they're all like, whatever fruit they're selling, they're like, you don't want. Yeah, I think it's a watermelon. He just grabs it and throws it. So like that specifically was like, I think that's one of my favorite parts too.
You know what's hilarious about the scene when they're on the boat is how they're like looking for Indiana Jones, right? And they're trying to find him, and he's like, he's there. And this fool just swam from one boat to the other, and he pops out on top of the submarine. Then he gets on top of the submarine, and he starts like running around in circles, like, where am I? What am I doing? And an integral line to who Indiana Jones is as a character is when he's trying to retrieve the Ark, and he tells Sala and Marion to like start planning a plane and a boat and all that for London. They're like, what are you gonna do? And he's like, I don't know, I'm just making it up as I go along. And it's like, yes, I love this.
It's so true.
Because he's not a superhero.
No.
He's not some, even though he does this stuff, it's not without danger or peril. He could easily lose his life doing any of the things he does.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
for
And
real.
in a very non-glamorous way as well. Like when he's climbing on that truck, he could just fall off, hit his head and die. And they'd be like, what was that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Anything could happen. It's crazy.
But Ro, that opening scene, I do think that it just, that scene perfectly sets up like the nature of every scene in this movie. There's a high and then there's a low, and then there's a high and then there's a low, and then there's a comedic moment, and it's all with this action and this beautiful music. And like, yeah, like Alfred Molina's character's name is like Satipo, right?
Yeah.
And like he betrays Indiana Jones, and then seconds later you see that he's dead. And he had told Indiana Jones like, adios, senor, and then fucking Indiana Jones picks up the idol and is like, adios, Satipo.
Yeah.
And even when he's being chased by the Jovitos, right? Like that's a comedic moment, but it isn't to like the detriment of the locals. You know what I mean? Like it isn't treating them like, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of handled with care. You know what I mean? Like it's this
like
funny
a negative
moment, but
light
it's
on
not
them,
in a negative way of the like portraying them in a negative light. You know what I mean? And it reminds me of the Jurassic Park sequence that we see later on in when he does Jurassic Park, the raptors all running over the hill or whatever. If you put those two shots side by side, you wouldn't even know what movie it is until you see Indy running over. You know what I mean?
Point,
and like
honestly.
even
That's a good
Alan
point.
Grant is like an Indy ripoff. You know what I mean?
Pretty much. Dinosaur Indy.
This is ending with me talking about how Indiana Jones is better than Jurassic Park, basically.
I'm here for it.
Yeah, I mean, since we're on the subject, is Indiana Jones better than Jurassic Park? I think it is.
Yes.
I like Indiana Jones more.
What I was gonna say about that first scene too is I think that's what differentiates Indiana or the Raiders of the Lost Ark to any other action movie that anybody could possibly want to make in the same type of realm or anything that came before or after it, and many films that aren't of the genre, is that you start with the climax and then you go all the way back down and then you build up again and then you fall back down. And like this movie has two big mountains, and then it has that middle, but it never. And then that's what's kind of cool. It never really goes trope like low because there's so much action. It always kind of gets steady. But that's what I think I really like about this movie is that it just starts with the pop, like everything this movie is gonna be about within 5 to 10 minutes, and then it slows back down, and then it pops again.
I like that you said that it starts with almost a climax, because that's really what it does feel like. Like for a lot of movies, that's the ending.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Because when he's taking it, like the John Williams' score comes in, Alfred Molina's face, like
the light,
and then you just like when you figure out that he puts out the weight and it worked out, and you're like, oh, did it? Nope. Everything starts crumbling, and
He should have left the sand.
I know he took some out. He's stupid.
He had the right amount of sand already.
Trust your gut.
One of my favorite character moments though is when he's looking at the idol and he gets like eye level with it, and then he starts rubbing his chin. He's like,
He does a shimmy.
Yeah.
He does a shimmy and he twists his hands like this. It's so good.
And you've seen this moment like ripped off in so many other things. You know, like this is the first 5 minutes of the movie, and it's so iconic. Like. It really does feel like the ending. Yeah, like you said, like just the ending of another great movie.
Exactly.
But it's the beginning.
Yeah.
It would be the ending of another good movie.
Yeah.
And I think you talk about how like other movies get from this and do it later. It's like this reminds me of like Mission Impossible in the first one when he's kind of hanging.
Oh, and he's rappelling from the ceiling.
And then the drip of water is coming off of his glasses. Like that's the same amount of like that's where this director saw Indiana Jones and was like, how do I get that feeling into movies? And Indiana Jones did it first.
Goddamn right.
I could go on all day.
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I know, man. I could talk all day
I don't know if we should just keep rambling about this. I do think we're probably going to talk about the third one for sure, right?
I think we should.
Do we talk about the second one just to be completionists?
I mean,
because if we are going to talk about the second one, we have to talk about Crystal Skull.
You bastard.
Then no.
I'm like, because I was thinking, I was like, we could legit like talk about the second one for a little bit and then go into the third one, or we could do the second and fourth one together. And then do the third one.
She started with the second one because it's a prequel.
Yeah, that's true. It is true.
He's like, I think together there's enough to talk about it. 2 and 4.
I can find enough hate. No, I was kidding.
Yeah.
You know, I actually find it interesting that the second one is a prequel and that it's worse. It's almost like if, you know how like, this is relevant to right now, the Batman is coming out, right? And Matt Reeves, with his take on the character, he's like, I don't want to do the Batman origin story, but I would like to do Batman like 1 to 2 years into his career.
Like beginning Batman type
right?
deal?
And what we learn later on with the second one is that like that's Indy just kind of starting out, going on these missions, and maybe that's why it's not as good. I don't even want to give them the credit of saying that they thought that far ahead. Like, because it's the prequel, he should be worse, right? But with the first one, since he's already more established and he is such a mystery, you don't know like where the fuck did the guy learn all these skills? You know what I mean?
Comes out of the shadows, like.
Yeah, so I think it's just kind of similar to like the Batman, where it's like Matt Reeves is not going to do this origin story, and even the first Indiana Jones is not an origin story, and it just has this way of you're thrown right into the world and let's go. You're either with this or you're not. Is I guess what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's facts.
Yeah, man.
They treated this film like you're going to come watch it because it has both of our names in it. You don't need to be established. Like, this character doesn't need to give it intro. I like that. I think that's why it works. Like, this Raiders of the Lost Ark.
You're going to find out.
Yeah.
Can we talk about trucker hats with safari flaps for a second?
All right, let's go.
Oh, my God. He's wearing the stupid hat again.
Oh, my God. Did you see Steve and George wearing those stupid fucking hats? What are those, trucker hats with safari flaps on the back? Where did they even get those? George Lucas is like, the costume designer told me I was the only one he's ever seen pull this off. Amazing drip. The drip is out of control in the behind the scenes. Like, hey, Director Fitz, if you happen to be listening to this, you have to post these outfits, dude.
Yeah, follow us, Director Fitz.
Yeah, shout out Director Fitz, because this is a perfect movie to show off the drip. You know what I mean? Like, I seen Steven Spielberg wearing this cool like Hawaii shirt. You have the trucker hat with the Raiders of the Lost Ark logo on it. Like, really I need that, bro. I don't care. A24, I know you've been doing these auction sale things. Get one of those hats. I will bid on it. Absolutely just phenomenal.
He has a bunch of pictures where he's dripped out. Spielberg?
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen, but during the production, he also wore Star Wars trucker hats
haven't
too,
seen
like
that.
that just have the Star Wars font on it.
It's always cool when you see him because I know you've mentioned this a lot before. Just like when he wears the Universal one.
Yeah, I love it, dude. Like Spielberg with the long hair, the sunglasses, and the hat. Like, is there any more of a director look?
So official.
Director fits. If you're here, if you're listening to this, there is no more iconic fit than Steven Spielberg with the long shaggy hair, the glasses, and the hat. It's just. This is what I picture. If I was ever going to make a movie, I'm growing out my hair. I'm getting the trucker.
I think it's funny because when we first started hanging out, I think you said something about my hair because it's all long. You're like, you could pull off the
oh, yeah. I was like, you can't cut your
look.
hair. I was like, you have to have the hat and the long, shaggy hair. It's the director's look, dude. Nate, before we end this podcast, I heard that you have a little story about George Lucas. Would you like to tell that to the people?
I was like, where are you going with this? Yeah, dude.
Wait, what? It's getting real.
This is funny, dude. When I was young, I was like 10 or 11. I was at the Long Beach Grand Prix, and they had like a celebrity racing race, it's race all day. And George Lucas cut off some like CSI lady, and the fucker crashed into the wall right in front of us. George Lucas? Yeah. And I was just like, what the fuck?
I think the funniest thing about that is earlier this week, I saw the outfit he wore for that. I think it's in Director's Fits.
That's what sparked the conversation that we had because I saw it on Director's Fits and I was like,
there.
That was when he was there like a few years earlier, and then I saw him.
Oh, so he likes to go there a lot.
He was there a few times.
He's a big car guy. I mean, we know that because of American Graffiti.
Yeah.
And never mind. I'm not going to say it.
Oh, yeah. He's like, oh, no.
I'm just going to stop.
He's like, before I even bring it up.
Yeah,
It's so funny that I know exactly what he's talking about.
I'd like to keep doing this podcast, so
I'm super curious.
I'm not even going to go there. Caught myself.
And this pod, I'm so curious. But yeah, I did see George Lucas slam head on to a fucking wall one time. That was pretty crazy.
That's funny.
It's not too personal, but it just had to be brought up.
Yeah, it's funny.
We need to find this clip. If we find this clip, we'll post it on the Instagram.
All right, yeah.
Because
I think I can find it, honestly.
That's too funny.
I think 2007 Long Beach Grand Prix.
Are we going to see you in the background?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Is that young Nate? Oh
okay.
God.
Are you guys good talking about this?
Yeah. Otherwise, I'm just going to go for another hour. So.
Yeah, me too. And I'm sure this is already becoming
I'm sure there's nobody listening anymore. So.
If you made it this far, like and subscribe on YouTube. Leave a comment. Tell us your personal connection to Indiana Jones. I'm sure if you're a movie lover that you have one. If you haven't seen this, go do your homework. Watch this one and suffer through all four of them. Because the first one and the third one are definitely worth the watch.
Yeah.
And, just building out the whole world of Indiana Jones is
a lot of
fun. Definitely worth it. This has got to be a top 5 character. Like in the, I'm gonna leave it there. I think he's a top 5 character of all time. Ro, I know you have something to say.
I was just gonna say, go out and watch all 4 because I know there's a listener that we have that said the
fourth
second
one is good.
The second one's underrated. So I'm just curious to be
I'm
like,
looking at you.
Well, you guys already called him out that it's Nate's brother.
Yeah, I'm looking at you.
But I'm just we're curious to see people think of the overall arc.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Because it is a staple piece.
If DM us, follow us, the Grand Cinema Hotel on Instagram.
I'm looking at you, Director Fitz. I'm tagging you. So.
If you want to be on the show, Director Fitz?
I'm gonna hit you with the timestamp, bro. Let's do a collab.
Okay, well, we've pleaded enough, so I think it's time we end this show. All right, guys. Thanks for checking in. We're checking out Indiana Jones. I give it 5 stars. Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's not just called Indiana Jones. I think this is a 5-star movie. I think it's a phenomenal movie. I think it's one of the best. I'll leave it there. Nate, rating?
I'm going to go 5. I'm going to go 10. I'm going to
You
go
go
20.
10?
Yeah, I love this movie.
Ro, you want to spoil our fun?
4.5.
Boo! All right, guys. We're out of here.
All right, later.
Have a good one.